You might think of pyramids and, immediately picture Egypt, these colossal, iconic structures rising majestically from the desert sands.
Absolutely. Symbols of ancient power, mystery. They've captivated people for millennia.
Right. But imagine, if you will, a pyramid in Greece, tucked away on an ancient plain, quietly defying, well, pretty much any easy categorization.
Yep. Sparking some really fierce academic battles,
Yep.
decades of them.
Exactly. So today we're taking a deep dive into one of the most enigmatic structures in the ancient world, the Hellenikon Pyramid.
It's definitely less famous than its Egyptian cousins, but arguably even more perplexing in some ways.
Our mission here is really to unravel the whole mystery for you, our listener.
Yeah.
We want to peel back the layers, cover all the fascinating speculations, the competing theories.
And the sheer historical and archaeological drama, honestly. It makes this site just utterly compelling.
Yeah, we've pored over scholarly articles, scrutinized detailed research, sifted through archaeological notes. Basically, we've distilled it down to the most intriguing nuggets of knowledge and, well, surprising facts we can find.
And that drama, that constant push and pull of interpretation, that is precisely what makes the Hellenikon Pyramid such a crucial and enduring case study.
How so?
Well, this isn't just about a pile of ancient stones, right? It's a living testament to how archaeological knowledge itself is formed, how it's vigorously contested, and how it gets reevaluated, sometimes radically, over time.
Okay, I see.
Its true significance isn't in any settled conclusion because, frankly, there isn't one. Not really. Instead, it's in its status as a monument to debate. It's constantly challenging our assumptions about the ancient world and the very process of discovery itself.
So it's the questions it raises almost more than any answers.
In many ways, yes. At its core, the Hellenikon Pyramid is defined by two central, almost irreconcilable conflicts, two fiercely entrenched disagreements that have kept archaeologists, scientists, you name it, at loggerheads for decades.
Okay, what are they?
The first is chronology. Basically, how old is it? Is it a conventional 4th century BC structure fitting neatly into the known timeline of classical Greece?
The sort of standard view.
Right. Or is it, as some pretty radical theories suggest, much, much older, potentially dating back to circa 2720 BC?
Wow, okay. That would make it.
A true contemporary of the iconic pyramids on the Giza Plateau, which, as you can imagine, is quite the bombshell that changes everything, if true.
No kidding. And the second conflict.
The second revolves around its function. What was it actually for? We have ancient testimony, famously from the Roman-era Greek writer Pausanias, pointing towards it being a solemn tomb for fallen soldiers, a memorial.
A legendary battle, right?
Exactly. But then the physical architectural evidence and its highly strategic location, they strongly point towards a far more pragmatic military purpose, something like a defensive watchtower or maybe a small fort.
Okay, so tomb versus fort, basically. And ancient versus, well, not quite so ancient.
Precisely. Those two questions, how old is it and what was it for, are the persistent enigmas that we'll navigate today.
So we're about to embark on a journey deep into these very debates. Get ready for surprising facts, a critical look at how history is pieced together, and maybe, just maybe, a new perspective on how we understand the ancient world's earliest builders.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's start by unpacking this fascinating puzzle, beginning with what we're actually looking at on the ground. Where is this thing?
Right. Location is absolutely critical here. This isn't some random structure just dropped in a field. Its placement screams strategic purpose.
Where exactly?
It's situated on the southwestern edge of the Argolid Plain. Now, this is an incredibly fertile and historically significant region in the Peloponnese, right near the modern village of Hellenikon.
Okay.
And crucially, it's also very close to the Kefalari Springs. These were the ancient source of the Eresinos River. So water nearby, fertile land.
Yeah.
Important place.
But its position isn't just about resources, is it? You mentioned strategic importance.
Oh, absolutely. It's directly on what was, in antiquity, the primary arterial road, a veritable ancient highway.
Not just a minor track.
No. Think of it as the main connection between Argos, a truly powerful and ancient city-state, with deep Mycenaean roots in Tegea over in Arcadia, plus the mountainous regions of Kynuria.
So a major corridor.
A vital corridor. For trade goods like olive oil, wine, pottery, for the movement of armies, for official communications, for literally everything of significance traveling across this crucial part of the Peloponnese. It was a lifeline.
It sounds like the M1 or the I-95 of its day, absolutely vital. And the pyramid itself is built on a relatively low hill, but don't let that fool you. From that specific vantage point, you'd have had an absolutely commanding view.
That's right. We're talking about being able to survey the entire Argolic Gulf, the sprawling coastal plain, and every single major approach to Argos from both the south and the west.
Wow. So you could see everything coming.
Pretty much. Picture yourself standing atop this structure, observing the entire landscape. You'd understand immediately just how vital that vantage point would have been for surveillance, for signaling, and frankly, for asserting control in ancient times.
That panoramic line of sight is a truly critical detail then.
It absolutely is. It heavily favors interpretations of the pyramid as a military installation or a watchtower. It's almost impossible to look at its position and not immediately think of defense or observation.
So the landscape itself tells a story.
Indeed. It's almost impossible to decouple the structure from its setting. This strategic context is a cornerstone for many of the theories about its function. It directly links to its practical utility in a world where controlling movement, observing potential threats, maintaining visibility over vast swaths of territory was paramount.
It's not just a building then.
It's a statement about control, intrinsically tied to the landscape and the power dynamics of the ancient argolid.
Now let's talk about the structure itself, because when we say pyramid, it's probably not what you're picturing in your head. Definitely not those colossal Egyptian monuments.
It's a really important distinction. The term pyramid here is technically a misnomer.
How so?
The Hellenikon structure isn't a true pointed pyramid like those you see in Egypt. Instead, it's what archaeologists call a truncated pyramid, or to use a more precise architectural term, a frustum.
Okay, a frustum. What does that actually look like?
Basically, it's more accurately described as a solid pyramidal base that would have once supported a flat-topped upper structure. Its base is rectangular, not square.
Rectangular. Interesting.
Yeah, measuring approximately 7.03 meters by 9.07 meters. The outer walls slope steeply inwards at about a 60-degree angle, rising to a height of 3.5 meters.
So quite steep.
Very. And here's a crucial detail that fundamentally sets it apart. At that 3.5-meter mark, the walls actually become vertical.
Vertical, so it doesn't come to a point.
Exactly. Think of it like a pyramid with its top cleanly sliced off, creating a flat upper surface.
And that vertical section is significant because...
Because that design strongly indicates that the structure was roofed. The transition from sloping to vertical walls clearly implies support for an upper platform, maybe a small room or a ceiling.
Which is totally different from Egyptian pyramids.
Fundamentally different. It distinguishes it from the open-to-the-sky or pointed forms of Egyptian funerary pyramids. It immediately sets it apart and challenges any preconceived notions you might have based on Giza. It speaks to a very different purpose.
Right. A flat top implies you could stand on it, use it.
Absolutely. The flat-top design implies a usable space on top. Perhaps a platform for observers, a small room for a guard, maybe a lookout post for signaling. This architectural detail is key. It's why those Egyptian comparisons, while sensational and easy to make, are often quite misleading.
So not a tomb, not designed for grand burials.
Seems unlikely based on this. It looks designed for occupation, protection, and practical use over time.
Okay. Let's move on to the materials and masonry. Because I understand even the building blocks themselves are, well, a puzzle and a battleground in this academic debate.
They really are. The Hellenikon Pyramid is built entirely of large, rough-hewn blocks of local gray limestone.
Easy to get hold of nearby, presumably.
Yes, readily available from the surrounding area, a pragmatic choice. But it's the style of masonry that really sparks contention among scholars.
What style is that?
It's described as trapezoidal and partially polygonal. Now, what that means, simply put, is you have large, irregularly shaped blocks, often with more than 4 sides.
So, not neat squares or rectangles.
Not at all, but they're fitted together with remarkable precision. These blocks interlock so tightly, often without any mortar, that they create a surface reminiscent of a complex jigsaw puzzle. Each stone supports its neighbors.
Wow, that sounds impressive.
It is, and this construction technique is frequently compared to what we call Cyclopean masonry.
Cyclopean, like the Cyclops.
Exactly. The term comes from the ancient Greeks believing only mythical giants, like the Cyclops, could have lifted and fitted such massive rough-hewn stones. You see it in the impressive walls of nearby Mycenaean citadels like Tiryns.
Okay, so there's a visual link to much older structures.
A very striking similarity. And this is a cornerstone of the argument for a much earlier Bronze Age construction date for the Hellenikon Pyramid. It makes you think, could this really be that old, thousands of years older than generally assumed?
It definitely plants the seed of doubt about the conventional date.
It absolutely does. That visual echo of those monumental Bronze Age walls is undeniable. However,
There's always a however in archaeology, isn't there?
pretty much. Proponents of the later 4th century BC date counter that while the technique does have ancient roots, this specific style of polygonal masonry is also characteristic of fortifications built in the Argolid during that later period.
So the style isn't unique to one era.
They argue it isn't. They'd say the style alone makes it an unreliable chronological marker. You have this incredible craftsmanship, this interlocking precision, but its age remains hotly contested, even down to the very stones it's built from.
Is a testament to the ambiguity, as you said.
Exactly. Even the building materials themselves are a battleground, which leads us directly into the next major controversy.
Right. If the outside presents a mystery, what about the inside? Does that offer clearer clues about its purpose?
Well, it certainly offers profoundly compelling clues. The main entrance is on the eastern side, strategically oriented towards the Argolic Gulf.
Facing the sea. Makes sense for watching the coast.
Precisely. This opens into a narrow corridor, which then leads to a second, smaller entrance on the southern wall. This brings you into the main space, a single, roughly square room, about 7 meters on each side.
Okay, symbol room.
But it's the details found within that internal configuration that are truly crucial for understanding its function. The 1937 excavations carried out by the American School of Classical Studies at Athens under L. Lord.
Yes, you mentioned them earlier.
They noted distinct cuttings in the stone for door jambs and, significantly, a clear socket for a wooden bar. This isn't a minor detail.
A socket for a bar, like to lock the door.
Exactly. This evidence strongly suggests that the doors were designed to be fastened securely from the inside.
From the inside. Hold on.
Think about that for a moment. That's a feature highly characteristic of a fort, a refuge, or a guardhouse. A place where people would barricade themselves in for protection from an external threat.
Right. But totally at odds with the tomb.
Fundamentally at odds. Why would you need to lock a tomb from the inside? Who would be inside to bar the door? Typically, a tomb would be sealed permanently from the outside.
Okay, that's a really strong point. Anything else inside?
Yes. Adding to this compelling evidence, the same excavation also uncovered a cement-lined tank in the northeast corner of the main room, and a drain piercing the north wall.
A tank and a drain suggests water storage.
Strongly suggests a provision for an internal water supply within the structure. For a small garrison, this means they could store enough water to sustain themselves for days, maybe weeks, during a siege or an extended watch.
Providing a degree of self-sufficiency.
Exactly. Which further supports a non-funerary long-term occupation. It implies it was meant to sustain a small group of people for a period, not just house the dead.
So the internal evidence provides really compelling clues for the function debate.
It really does. It's like the building itself is speaking. If you know how to listen to its architectural language, it points strongly away from a burial site.
So we've established what this intriguing structure looks like, where it sits, some compelling clues from inside. Now let's dive headfirst into the core of the controversy. Just how old is this thing, really?
Right. And as you said, this isn't a minor quibble over a few decades. It's a fundamental schism spanning millennia. It pits traditional archaeological methods against novel scientific techniques.
A paradigm clash, you called it.
It really is. And the outcome of this debate carries significant implications. It could potentially rewrite the timeline of monumental architecture in Europe. It challenges long-held assumptions about the relationship between ancient Greece and Egypt.
How so?
Well, it suggests either an unprecedented indigenous development of sophisticated building techniques in Greece much earlier than thought, or perhaps a far earlier, much more direct and currently unrecognized connection with civilizations like those in Egypt.
High stakes, then.
Extremely high stakes, with global historical implications.
Let's start with the conventional chronology, the safe and established view.
Okay. The most widely accepted date, supported by the vast majority of the archaeological community and officially endorsed by the Greek Ministry of Culture, places the construction of the Hellenikon Pyramid in the late 4th century BC.
So roughly 400 to 300 BC.
Exactly. This situates the monument firmly within the late classical or early Hellenistic period, a time known for widespread fortification building in the region.
And the evidence for this.
The primary evidence comes from those 1937-1938 excavations led by L. Lord from the American School. During this work, archaeologists unearthed numerous pottery sherds, lamps, and other ceramic artifacts. Crucially, these came from within and immediately around the structure.
And these look like 4th century BC styles.
Typologically, yes. They were characteristic of the 4th century BC. Lord's team meticulously documented where they found them, often in stratigraphic layers, suggesting they were contemporary with the pyramid's construction or its early use.
So, based on the pottery.
Based on these findings and the structure's military-style features, Lord concluded that both Hellenikon and the similar Ligorio pyramid were guardhouses or small garrisons from this period.
And this conclusion is bolstered by the masonry style, even though it looks like older stuff.
Right. While that polygonal technique can be found in much earlier periods, scholars arguing for the 4th century date maintain that the specific arrangement and finishing of the stones at Hellenikon is entirely consistent with other regional fortifications known to have been built during that very time.
Like other forts in the area from the same period.
Exactly. The archaeologist A. Sampson, who did more work there in the 1980s, explicitly made this connection. He affirmed his belief in a classical or late classical origin based on a comprehensive comparative study of masonry techniques across the Argolid. He pointed to examples in Mycenae's later phases and other small forts.
Okay. And didn't the Greek government weigh in?
They did. Further reinforcing this, in 2017, the Greek Ministry of Culture issued a definitive statement. They basically settled the matter from their official perspective. They reaffirmed the late 4th century BC date, said it functioned as a fort, and unequivocally dismissed the prehistoric dating theory as scientifically unsubstantiated.
So that's the official mainstream archaeological position, grounded in traditional methods.
Pretty much, it's the established view.
But then, a truly radical challenge emerged. Something that threatened to rewrite the timeline completely, not just by decades or centuries, but by millennia.
Exactly. In the 1990s, this long-standing consensus was, as you said, radically challenged. This came from a multidisciplinary team led by Professor Ioannis Louritsis. He's a physicist, a specialist in archaeometry applying scientific methods to archaeology.
Okay, so bringing in the hard sciences.
Right. Their research, published in peer-reviewed journals, introduced a completely new line of evidence, one that had the potential to overturn everything we thought we knew.
What do they do?
They employed a novel, and at the time, quite experimental dating technique, thermoluminescence, or TL dating, and they applied it directly to the crystalline structure of the pyramid's limestone blocks themselves.
Thermoluminescence. How does that work on stone?
Well, the scientific principle is quite elegant, though complex to actually do. When stones are quarried and exposed to sunlight, any accumulated thermoluminescent signal that stored energy from radiation gets bleached or reset to zero.
Okay, sunlight clears the clock.
Precisely. Once those blocks are fitted into the wall, their inner surfaces are shielded from light. From that moment, they begin to accumulate a new TL signal at a predictable rate. This comes from natural background radiation, cosmic rays, radioactive elements in the soil, that sort of thing.
Like a radiation clock starting over.
Exactly. By carefully measuring this accumulated radiation, the team aimed to calculate the amount of time that had passed since the block was put in place, essentially, dating the construction of the pyramid itself.
Fascinating. And the results?
The results were, to put it mildly, explosive. The dating of samples taken from those megalithic blocks of the Hellenikon Pyramid yielded an average construction date of 2730 BC, plus or minus 720 years.
2730 BC, plus or minus 720 years.
Okay.
It's a big margin of error,
Yeah.
but still, 2730 BC.
Right. Here's what makes this so significant. If correct, this would make the Hellenikon Pyramid older than the Pyramid of Djoser in Egypt, usually considered the first true pyramid, dating to around 2670 BC.
Older than the first Egyptian pyramid.
Potentially, yes. And it would make it contemporary with the iconic pyramids on the Giza Plateau, like the Great Pyramid of Khufu from the mid-3rd millennium BC.
That is an astonishingly early date.
It is. It pushes back the timeline of monumental stone architecture in Greece by millennia. It shatters the long-held belief that such complex, large-scale stone construction was purely an Egyptian invention that slowly diffused outwards.
It suggests an independent, very early development in Greece itself.
Astonishingly early, yes, right here in Greece.
Did they have any other evidence to back this up? It's a huge claim.
They believed they did. To bolster their case, the Louritsis team presented what they considered corroborating evidence. They recovered a ceramic sherd from the pyramid's exterior foundation trench.
From foundations, okay.
And they dated this using both TL and optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, a similar light-based dating method. This yielded a concordant age of 3000 BC, plus or minus 250 years.
So, even older pottery nearby.
Seemingly. They even ventured into archaeoastronomy. They claim that the pyramid's long entrance corridor was astronomically oriented to the rising of Orion's belt around 2400-2000 BC, suggesting a possible celestial function.
Orion's belt. Wow. So multiple lines of scientific argument pointing to a very early date.
That was their case. A potentially earth-shattering claim rewriting European prehistory and challenging assumptions about Greece and Egypt.
But, as you might expect, such a revolutionary claim probably didn't go unchallenged.
Oh, absolutely not. It ignited a fierce academic firestorm.
I can imagine.
Liritsi's claims were met with widespread skepticism and have, to this day, never really been accepted by the mainstream archaeological community. The critique focused on several key areas: methodology, interpretation.
Okay, break it down for us. What were the main criticisms?
Well, the classicist Mary Lefkowitz, for instance, argued pretty forcefully that the research wasn't, in her view, an objective scientific inquiry. She felt it was designed to substantiate a preconceived, maybe even nationalist, theory about the great antiquity of Greek civilization.
Nationalist. How so?
This was happening around the time of the very contentious Black Athena debates, a complex academic controversy about the cultural roots of ancient Greece, questioning traditional narratives about European origins versus African or Semitic influences. Lefkowitz and others worried the pyramid research is being deployed to support a particular ideological agenda, proving Greek precedents rather than purely scientific discovery.
Ah, okay. So concerns about bias. What about the science itself?
Well, Lefkowitz also pointed out that the TL dating results had that very large margin of error. Plus or minus 720 years is huge when you're trying to pin down a precise date for such a major claim.
Yeah, that's a range of almost 1,500 years.
Exactly. And she raised a very valid archaeological point. What if the dated stones were recycled?
Recycled from an even older building?
Yes. If they were reused from an earlier, maybe Bronze Age structure, then the TL dates would tell us when those stones were quarried or first used, not when they were built into this specific pyramid. That would completely invalidate the dates for the pyramid's construction.
That's a big what if. Were there other scientific critiques?
Yes. Other critics just flat out highlighted that TL dating of stone surfaces was a very new experimental method back then. It hadn't been sufficiently cross-checked or calibrated against other established techniques to be considered reliable for such a definitive claim.
So, methodological concerns about the dating technique itself.
Right. There were questions about the consistency of results from different parts of the same stone block, and how accurately the sunlight bleaching could be guaranteed for such large, potentially partially buried stones before use.
Okay. What about the archaeological evidence? Did that support the early date?
That's where things got really tricky for the early dating theory. Archaeologist A. Sampson, who had actually collaborated on the geophysical surveys and some excavation parts of the Liritsi's project.
You worked with them.
Initially, yes, but he later publicly distanced himself from their final chronological conclusion.
Why?
Sampson argued that his own extensive excavations clearly showed the Hellenikon Pyramid was built on top of early Helladic foundations.
On top of even older ruins.
Yes, remains from an even earlier prehistoric settlement. This stratigraphic evidence, finding the pyramid literally sitting on older layers, proved, in his view, that the pyramid itself must be from a later period than those foundations.
That seems pretty conclusive, stratigraphically speaking.
It's a strong argument. He reaffirmed his belief in a classical or late classical date based on his masonry studies, contending it aligned perfectly with known 4th century BC fortifications in the region. Critics also hammered the point that the Liritsi's team seemed to largely ignore the substantial body of evidence from the 1930s and 1980s excavations, all that 4th century pottery found in stratified layers.
So ignoring inconvenient evidence, essentially.
That was the accusation. In more informal academic discussions, online forums, things like that, the early dating is often quickly dismissed as pseudoscience. It's sometimes seen as driven more by an agenda to prove Greeks built pyramids concurrently with Egyptians, rather than a dispassionate scientific inquiry. The traditional archaeological community has largely closed ranks against it.
But is it really that simple? Just dismiss it.
It's never simple in archaeology. This intense debate really reveals a deeper disciplinary tension. It's a clash, as we said, between traditional humanistic archaeology, relying on stratigraphy, typology, comparative analysis, and the hard science of archaeometry, which offers the promise of absolute physics-based dates, seemingly cutting through the ambiguity.
So different ways of knowing, clashing.
Exactly. And the controversy is further complicated by the messy nature of the evidence at Hellenikon. The site contains artifacts from a huge range of periods: Proto-Helladic, Classical, Hellenistic, Roman, all mixed together through centuries of use, abandonment, disturbance.
A jumbled history.
Very jumbled. This lack of clean, undisturbed stratigraphic layers weakens the reliability of dating based only on pottery. It creates what we might call an evidential vacuum.
A vacuum.
Yeah, a situation where traditional methods struggle to provide one undeniable answer. And this vacuum then allowed a novel but controversial scientific method like TL dating of stone to be proposed as a definitive solution.
Filling the gap, perhaps too eagerly.
Perhaps. So what you have is a scenario where the ambiguity of the archaeological record permits two mutually exclusive interpretations to coexist. Each side champions its preferred line of evidence while dismissing the others. It's a true stalemate, a testament to the challenges of interpretation.
So just to recap this standoff, on one side, the conventional view, supported by archaeologists like Lord and Sampson, the Greek ministry, evidence, pottery, lamps found in situ, masonry style compared to other 4th century forts, method, traditional archaeology, date 400-300 BC.
Correct. Fits neatly into the known historical pattern.
On the other side, the early Hellenic challenge, led by Laritz's, evidence, TL dating of limestone blocks, ceramics from foundation trench, maybe archaeoastronomy, method, archaeometry, physics-based dating, date around 2720 DC, plus or minus a lot.
Also correct, suggests a radically different prehistory.
But both sides face major critiques. Conventional view, mixed stratigraphy, pottery could be later masonry style, not unique to the 4th century. Early view, TL method was new, huge error margin, ignores contradictory archaeological data, potential bias.
That sums up the stalemate pretty well. It's fascinating and persistent.
Okay, so with its age fiercely contested, maybe its purpose is clearer? Well, probably not.
Not really, no. Just as its age is a source of intense debate, the original purpose of the Hellenikon Pyramid remains another unresolved mystery. It's captivated scholars for centuries.
Different theories, different evidence, again.
Exactly the same pattern. Competing hypotheses ranging from a solemn tomb to a pragmatic military outpost, each supported by different types of evidence. This pits that single, tantalizing, ancient literary account against the more prosaic, but arguably more powerful testimony of the structure's own architecture and its placement in the landscape.
Text versus stones, essentially.
In a nutshell, evaluating these theories reveals that classic tension in archaeology. How do you weigh revered ancient texts against the tangible material facts on the ground? It's a continuous balancing act.
So let's start with the most alluring ancient legend, the one that draws us into Greek mythology.
Right. The only ancient literary text that might refer to the Hellenikon Pyramid comes from Pausanias. He was that Greek geographer traveling around in the 2nd century AD.
His description of Greece, the ancient travel guide.
Exactly. In Book 2, he recalls seeing a building made very like a pyramid on the road from Argos to Epidaurus.
Very like a pyramid. Intriguing phrasing.
It is, and Pausanias doesn't just mention seeing it, he recounts the local story he was told about it. He writes that it was a polyandrion.
Which means?
A common tomb, a mass grave, built, according to the story, to commemorate soldiers who died in a legendary battle for the throne of Argos.
That mythical fight between the twin brothers.
Yes, Proetus and Acrisius, mythical kings of Argos. Pausanias even adds a fascinating detail that speaks to how old people thought it was even back then. He notes this battle was said to be the first time soldiers ever used shields.
Wow. So he saw that as a sign of its immense age.
He did. This account is incredibly alluring. It connects the stone structure to the deep well of Greek mythology, gives it a dramatic, heroic origin story.
It's a truly captivating story. Makes you want to believe it,
But there are two significant problems with taking Pausanias' account at face value as literal truth. Problems that lead most modern archaeologists to dismiss it.
Okay, what are they?
First, the problem of identification. Are we even sure he's talking about this specific structure at Hellenikon?
He just is on the road.
Right. He mentions its location as on the right, on the road to Epidaurus. But that road was long, and he also refers to another similar tomb elsewhere for Argives killed in a different battle. Some scholars and the Greek Ministry of Culture contend his description doesn't refer to the pyramid we see today at all. Maybe another lost structure, or maybe he was just recording local folklore.
So we can't even be sure he meant this building. What's the second problem?
The second, and perhaps more powerful argument against the tomb theory is the complete lack of corroborating physical evidence.
No bones.
No bones. Despite multiple excavations over the years, Lord, in 1937, Sampson in the 80s, no funerary remains of any kind have ever been discovered within or immediately around the pyramid.
Nothing at all. No ashes, grave goods.
Nothing. No human bones, no ashes, no burial goods like pottery or jewelry, no sarcophagi, zero. This total absence of funerary evidence makes the tomb, or even cenotaph, a monument without, remains hypothesis almost impossible to sustain based purely on the material record.
So the story is great, but the archaeology doesn't back it up at all.
Exactly. It highlights that classic challenge. How do you weigh a revered but ambiguous ancient text, possibly recording a much later myth, against the tangible, undeniable physical evidence or lack thereof at the site itself?
So if it wasn't a tomb, what else could it have been?
That brings us neatly to the military hypothesis. This is, by far, the most plausible and widely supported theory today.
Based on?
Based not on a single ancient text, but strongly supported by the structure's physical characteristics and its precise placement in the landscape. The things we discussed earlier, it's like all the pieces of that puzzle fit together much better.
What's the evidence here?
It's threefold and remarkably consistent. First, its strategic location. As we noted, its position on that major road, its commanding view absolutely ideal for a surveillance post.
Monitoring traffic, detecting threats.
Exactly. Imagine a small detachment of soldiers stationed there, constantly scanning the horizon, ready to send a signal. It's a natural lookout and checkpoint.
Okay, location makes sense. What else?
Second, its defensive architecture. This is a truly key piece of evidence. That main entrance designed to be barred securely from the inside.
The internal locking bar socket.
Right. That feature is unequivocally characteristic of a defensible space, a fort, a refuge, a guardhouse, designed to protect its occupants from external attack. And as we said, fundamentally inconsistent with a tomb.
Can't lock a tomb from the inside.
You really can't. Furthermore, that internal water supply we found, the cement-lined tank and drain, further supports the idea it was meant to sustain a small group of people for a period, maybe during a siege or extended watch, not just a one-time burial site.
So built to be defended and occupied.
Seems very likely. And third, there's the regional network aspect. This ties it into a broader defensive strategy.
How so?
The Hellenikon Pyramid has a clear line of sight to other known ancient watchtowers in the region. This suggests it could have been a node in a larger communications network.
Like signal fires.
Precisely. Functioning as a Frictoria, a beacon tower used to send messages over long distances via smoke or fire signals. Relayed from tower to tower, these signals could rapidly transmit warnings of approaching armies or other vital info across the Argolid plain.
A whole defensive system.
Potentially. This body of consistent physical evidence led L-Lord, the 1930s excavator, to conclude it was a guardhouse capable of accommodating a small garrison. And that view remains the dominant interpretation in modern scholarship.
It seems robust because it aligns with so many different physical observations.
Exactly. The structure, its engineering, its environment, they all point in this direction.
While the military hypothesis seems overwhelmingly compelling, have there been any other ideas floated, just to cover all bases?
Oh, sure. Some other ideas, though definitely less widely supported, have been suggested over the years. It's worth mentioning them.
Like what?
For instance, some researchers have suggested an agricultural purpose. Maybe a fortified farmhouse, or a secure storage facility for valuable agricultural products, olive oil, grain that needed protection in a potentially insecure rural area.
Is there any evidence for that?
Well, the discovery of a large storage jar, a pethos, inside the pyramid during excavations does lend some small, albeit inconclusive, support to that idea.
Okay. Anything else?
Given the cement-lined tank and drain, a simpler suggestion is that it just served as the base for a water tank or cistern. Basically, a reinforced water storage unit, maybe for local farming or travelers.
Makes sense. What about the astronomy connection?
Ah, yes. Tied directly to Professor Laritzis' early dating theory, it was proposed as an astronomical observatory, citing that alleged alignment with Orion's belt.
But that depends on the early date being right?
Heavily dependent, yes. It's not widely accepted and is seen as linked to their contested chronological framework. If the pyramid isn't that old, the alignment is likely just coincidental.
Any other theories?
A less common one posits it was maybe a roofless sanctuary used for worship, perhaps for the deified heroes of Pausanias' legendary battle, tying back to the myth in a non-funerary way.
Okay, so after all these different interpretations, we're back to this fundamental challenge. Weighing Pausanias' story against the physical evidence.
Exactly. It's that continuous process of critical evaluation in archaeology. How do you weigh a revered but ambiguous literary source, one that might be recording local folklore centuries after the fact against a robust body of physical evidence gathered through painstaking excavation.
The text versus the stones again.
Right. The single ancient text from Pausanias points towards a funerary narrative, but the material facts on the ground provide zero support for it. In fact, that internal door bar directly contradicts it.
Well, the military idea has no text, but lots of physical evidence.
Precisely. The military hypothesis has no direct textual backing from antiquity. No ancient general wrote about building it. But it is overwhelmingly supported by the tangible evidence: location, defensive design, internal features like the water supply.
So, at the end of the day,
The physical evidence really has to take precedence in an archaeological assessment. Pausanias was likely recording local folklore from his own time, a later attempt by people to explain a mysterious structure whose original purpose had long been forgotten. Or maybe he just misidentified it.
it helps understand the process of elimination, how archaeologists prioritize evidence.
Definitely. And why some theories ultimately carry more weight than others, even if they lack a good story.
Now, to fully grasp the significance of Hellenikon, you said it's essential to see it not just as an isolated anomaly, as part of a wider phenomenon.
Yes, exactly. Viewing it as a singular oddity in the Greek landscape is misleading. This structure is, in fact, the best preserved example of a wider, though still poorly understood, regional phenomenon of pyramid-like buildings found across southern Greece.
So there are others.
There are. Examining these other sites helps us establish an architectural typology, a classification system for structures sharing common features. This provides crucial context. It strengthens some functional theories, like the military one, while weakening others.
It reframes the question.
It absolutely does. It shifts it from, why is there a single bizarre pyramid in Greece, to what was the purpose of this network of truncated pyramidal blockhouses or fortified watchtowers in the Peloponnese? It paints a picture of a more organized, perhaps defensive landscape.
Okay, so tell us about these other sites. What's the most important comparison?
The most important comparative structure, Hellenikon's sister, is the pyramid at Ligorio.
Ligorio, where's that?
It's located on another ancient road, this one connecting Argos to the great sanctuary of Epidaurus, famous for its ancient theater and healing center.
And it looks similar.
Similar, but actually larger than Hellenikon. Its base measured approximately 14 by 12 meters.
Bigger. Is it well preserved?
Unfortunately, no. The Ligoria pyramid is in a much poorer state of preservation. Only its foundations and a few lower courses of stone remain.
What happened to it?
Over the centuries, it served as a convenient quarry for later builders. Many of its precisely cut stones were reused in other constructions, including the nearby Byzantine church of Agia Marina. Classic stone robbing.
Shame. Did excavations reveal anything?
Yes. Despite its ruined state, excavations showed it had a more complex interior than Hellenikon. It was divided into 4 distinct areas, maybe a central room with smaller chambers around it. It even may have been surrounded by a stone bench, suggesting it could have served as a meeting point or a refuge for more people.
Interesting. And the dating. Please don't tell me.
Oh, yes. Critically, Ligorio is embroiled in the exact same dating controversy as Hellenikon.
Of course it is. So, conventional date.
Conventional dating comes from 1937 excavations. They found pottery from the 5th and 4th centuries BC, plus a late 4th century BC coin. Supports that classical or Hellenistic date, fitting the fortification building period.
And the early date challenge.
Laritzis' team also applied thermoluminescence dating to Ligorio. They produced a prehistoric date of 2260 BC, plus or minus 710 years for the structure, though a single ceramic sherd they dated came out much later, around 660 BC, plus or minus 200 years.
So the same pattern. Conventional pottery dates versus much earlier TL dates with big error bars.
Exactly the same pattern. The existence of this sister pyramid, sharing a similar truncated form, strategic location on a major road, and this very contentious dating profile, it's truly critical.
Why?
Because it establishes that Hellenikon wasn't a unique folly, not a one-off structure. It was part of a broader building program or architectural tradition in the Argolid. Whether that program was classical or truly prehistoric remains the question.
So it wasn't just 2 of these structures. You mentioned whispers of more.
Right. Beyond Hellenikon and Ligorio, researchers have identified several other sites in the Peloponnese with remnants of similar pyramid-like structures, though most are now reduced to mere traces, victims of time and stone robbing.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. At Dalamanara in Argolis, only faint traces remain, often just visible to a trained archaeological eye. At Cambia, also in Argolis, near Nia Epidaurus, There's a structure described as a tower for fire signaling, a frictoria, and it's preserved to a greater height, making that function seem even more plausible.
Okay, go for it.
In Sicyon, over in Carinthia, only traces survive, likely lost to stone rubbing. Similarly, at Viglafia in Laconia, near the southern tip of the Peloponnese, only the base exists, probably dismantled for materials. And at Amphio in Boeotia, near Thebes, a structure described as scalar, or stepped, has been identified as part of this group.
And didn't Professor Laeritses claim there were even more?
He did. He argued for a much more extensive list, claiming over 20 such structures exist across Greece, including sites at Astros, Neotori, Mount Parnassos. However, it's important to note these identifications are not widely accepted by the mainstream. They remain part of his more controversial research.
Got it. But even the accepted ones help establish a pattern.
Absolutely. These other sites, even the mere traces, help establish an architectural typology. They shift the question, as we said, from why a single bizarre pyramid to what was the purpose of this network of fortified blockhouses across the Peloponnese.
From anomaly to regional pattern offers a much richer context for understanding Hellenikon.
Precisely. So after looking at all these, how do we define this typology? What are they, really?
Yeah, because pyramid seems wrong.
The cumulative evidence makes it abundantly clear that the popular label pyramid is convenient, eye-catching, but ultimately misleading. These Greek structures are fundamentally different from the pyramids of Egypt in nearly every significant aspect, despite any superficial similarity in shape.
What are the key differences? Let's lay them out.
Okay, first, scale and design. They are vastly smaller than Egyptian pyramids. They have rectangular, not square bases. And they were truncated, flat-topped structures, not true pyramids culminating in a point.
Material.
Rough, local limestone, not the fine, precisely cut blocks of Egyptian monuments transported over vast distances.
And the biggest difference, purpose.
Absolutely critical. They were emphatically not tombs. They show absolutely no connection to the complex funerary cosmology that drove the construction of the Egyptian pyramids. They had a wholly different reason for being built.
So, given these clear differences, what's a better name for them?
A more accurate architectural classification would be something like truncated pyramidal blockhouses, or maybe fortified rural watchtowers.
Kitschy, but more accurate.
Definitely more accurate. They appear to represent a unique and rare type of regional defensive architecture found predominantly in southern Greece. Their function seems intensely pragmatic, integrated into the landscape, designed to control roads, monitor territories, maybe protect valuable agricultural assets like olive groves or grain stores from bandits or rival city-states.
Instruments of control and defense.
That seems to be the most likely explanation. The existence of a network of these structures, sharing common features like strategic locations and defensive characteristics, strongly reinforces this military and administrative hypothesis over the more exotic or funerary interpretations.
So, after all this exploration, sifting the evidence, weighing theories, examining context, where does that leave us with the Hellenikon Pyramid itself?
Well, it's clear that after more than a century of modern investigation, this intriguing structure remains stubbornly enigmatic. The fundamental questions that have surrounded it since ancient travelers first described it persist with remarkable tenacity.
The two big ones, age and purpose.
Exactly. Its age is still caught in that academic impasse, that stalemate between two irreconcilable dating paradigms. One, traditional archaeology, puts it in the 4th century BC. The other, novel science, thrusts it back into the early Bronze Age, contemporary with Giza.
And its purpose, still trapped between.
Trapped between the allure of that single, ambiguous legend from Pausanias naming it a tomb and the overwhelming weight of its physical evidence, which points decisively toward a pragmatic military function as a fortified watchtower.
And the excavations themselves didn't help clarify things.
They yielded that confusing mix of artifacts from nearly every major period of Greek history. Proto-Hellenic, classical, Hellenistic, Roman. It's a testament to the site's long, continuous, if poorly understood, use over millennia.
But it also makes dating the origin really hard.
Exactly. It makes securely dating its origin through traditional stratigraphic methods almost impossible. The ground itself holds a jumbled story. And this evidential ambiguity is precisely the engine that drives the controversy.
It allows multiple interpretations to flourish.
Exactly. It creates a space where mutually exclusive interpretations can not only exist, but thrive, because there isn't one single irrefutable answer that satisfies all lines of inquiry. It's a compelling example of how archaeological truth can be elusive and contested.
Yet, You said earlier, it is precisely this ambiguity that constitutes the pyramid's greatest value, its most profound lesson.
I really believe that. It serves as a powerful academic tool and a public symbol of how history isn't a static set of facts etched in stone. It's a dynamic, living process of interpretation, vigorous debate, and constant revision.
It makes us question how we know what we know.
Absolutely. The Hellenikon Pyramid forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and to think critically about the nature of evidence itself. It demands that we question every source, whether it's a revered ancient text, a humble potsherd, or a reading from a sophisticated scientific instrument. It reminds us that archaeology is a constant dialogue with the past, often a frustrating one.
The Hellenikon Pyramid is, in the end, more than just a mysterious structure on a Greek plain then. It is, as you said, a monument to a debate, a fascinating case study in how history is made and unmade.
Its enduring legacy isn't a settled historical fact. It's the perpetual and vital inquiry it continues to inspire in each new generation of scholars and enthusiasts. It stands as a quiet but potent reminder that the most fascinating archaeological sites are often those that refuse to give up all their secrets.
Compelling us to look again, question assumptions.
And ask the fundamental questions anew. So considering all these layers of debate swirling around it, what further questions would you, our listener, ask if you could visit the Hellenikon Pyramid yourself? Standing there, gazing across that ancient plain, what would you want to know?